If you're a fan of the blending of traditional Celtic folk music with punk and rock, then the chances are very high that you're familiar with the Go Set. Based in Geelong, the Go Set are a band that have held fast and are celebrating being in their 20th year with the release of a brand new record as well as gearing up to tour all over the country. I'm Ez, you're listening to the Heavy Mag podcast, and this is my chat with vocalist and chief songwriter of the Go Set, Justin Keenan. Good afternoon, Justin. How you going?
Hey, Erin. Good.
May I begin by saying that it's great to see the name The Go Set pop up in my world once more. I can confirm that I have been a participant in a folk festival or two back in the day, drunkenly rocking out to Davey and chanting Scots Woe Hey and all the rest of it. So it's good to see you guys back with some new stuff.
Yeah, look, it's quite the journey, and I don't think that you know what that journey looks like at all until you kind of get to the point to have some perspective back. It's hard to have perspective at the time in a band that lasts for a long time. You know, it's hard to, because you're so busy all the time, and we've always got new challenges and new things we're trying to do. So you don't really get time to reflect on it. So it passes really quickly. And then 20 years go by and you go, gee, we're getting old now. We're old guys. We've been doing this for a long time. But I mean, we started playing, sort of small punk bars. And then for whatever reason, we seemed to be popular doing those kind of folk festivals because we were like the loud band, the late night band, and people got into it because it was kind of a bit of a break from all the diddly folk stuff, And then certainly in the last 10 or 15 years of the band, we've been spending the majority of our time in Europe and the US. So we've spent a lot of time on the road just because we got to a point in Australia that we just, unless you've got some kind of commercial radio behind you or a lot of Triple J or a lot of kind of mainstream media behind you, you can only rely on, the loyalty of people who like your music to a degree because there's not enough of them.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the Triple J demographic has changed significantly in the past 20 years. And while I know you have a large and loyal Aussie fan base, like, there are limitations here that I suppose you're not up against in Europe and the US. But with what you've just said about, after all these years reflecting on where you're now at and, taking the time to see your journey from perhaps a new perspective, with a new album about to drop and being on the other side of the bullshit we've been through the past couple of years, how might that have shaped this record and affected you guys as a band?
Oh, I think we've just learnt different ways to write music and to create music. I think a lot of bands will have come to the same conclusions as us. What I guess what was happening before COVID was we would get all together in a room and rehearse a song, and we'd discuss it and kind of workshop it as a group. And then when we'd all go into the studio at the same time, we'd all play our parts. We'd all, be in one spot at one time. And then when we came to a gig, we would obviously all be on stage at the same time. And COVID really turned all of that on its head because what it meant was I was stuck at home, and I'm the main songwriter. I was stuck at home, so I was kind of climbing the walls trying to work out how and when we're ever going to get together. So I just started recording songs to a click track and then sharing them around with the band guys. And what we realized is we got really, really good at making recordings without ever being in the same spot. So we all have our own little studios at home. So I would go in and record a demo, like a scratch track to a click. And then one of the other guys would lay a guitar melody on it, and I'd say, send it back to him, say maybe something more like this. So we were communicating with the sound files we were sending to each other rather than so much discussion. And so we just built layers and layers and I like that version, or maybe we should put it in a different time signature. And the one advantage that we had is we had a massive luxury of time because everyone was bored shitless. So we had this really massive amount of time to be able to and fro. So every night I'd be sitting there doodling away on the guitar and playing with these kind of vocal harmonies on myself. So I would sing a fifth or a third to my own vocal line, or I would mess around with the words, or, to see what the other guys thought. What do you think of these words? What do you think of this for a chorus? And so the bones of the songs, I actually think, as strange as this is to say, and as frustrating as it was at the time, our pre-production process was significantly more thorough on our last 2 records, because we've made 2 records now during COVID. And our pre-production was so much more thorough because we just had that time and space to be able to go back and forth and back and forth. And then with gigs, of course, we were doing kind of gigs in our lounge room, and people were logging on and watching online. So it was a little bit of a process to actually reintegrate back to normal, to get together as a band and rehearse, because we actually had to learn to play together again. And then we had to learn to play live together again. So that's been quite a roller coaster,
Yeah, and I guess that sort of highlights the pros and cons to the whole setup, because you got that breathing room to be able to almost get so much more personal with the songs, I think, rather than, like you said, all being in a room jamming and possibly talking over the top of one another. And and like, I'm in a band myself too, so I know that, like, when you're in that situation, sometimes you can settle, like, you think the song is done because you're all there, and it's time to get ready for gigs and all that sort of thing. That's the other thing. If you're not touring, you've got that space, and to be more personal with the songs. But also, it makes me think, just listening to you explain that just now, like, we're very, very fortunate that we all went through that at the time that we're in right now, rather than, say, back in the 70s or something, when the technology just wasn't there for us to experience that. So I think it's actually been a gift to music in a way. When I hear people like yourself explain how you've explored completely different avenues to how to write music and approach your music, and even just the online gigs and stuff that people were doing, is just something that we wouldn't have thought of even 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, a lot of things have changed, I mean, a lot of things have changed semi-permanently too. Like, now I know moving forward that we'll certainly get through the writing phase and probably into the pre-production phase without ever actually bothering to get together, because we all live in different places, right? So it's significantly easier for us to start the album process like that. We obviously, now when we can get together, we'll get together and rehearse, but we know that we can make an album like that. We also know that, that there's other elements to touring. So you can do a live show now, but you can also stream that live show and sell tickets to people overseas on watching that live show. And you can market kind of differently. On the downside, travel costs, hotels, flights, all of that stuff's double or triple what it was. So it's way less affordable for us right now to go back to Germany, where we need to go, and that's probably where our main audience is.
So a lot of bands write songs about the here and now, the future, and of course there's many brilliant storytellers within music, but a lot of songwriters come at songwriting from personal and introspective angles. But you guys are often rooted in historical, like, events or people of the past. Well, one could argue that that's a very, like, folk music aspect of your genre. Do you feel, I don't know, like a sense of perhaps responsibility to paint these pictures in a world that seems so self-obsessed and perhaps a little out of touch with the past?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a few things we do, we're really trying to hold on to the last threads of some traditional elements of, I mean, even the way you release music now, right? Like the idea that you release a whole album, you mean, like a whole 12 songs, that's 11 and a half songs too much for a lot of kids to process,
100%, yeah.
So the whole idea that you do that, or that you do it on vinyl, is just, it's more about the art than it is about trying to be current. And I think that what we do really well is I mean, I'm a pretty avid history reader, and kind of I'm a very avid student of geopolitics, and I pay a lot of attention to global issues. And stuff like that. And so naturally, and then growing up listening to folk music and protest songs,
Yeah.
that's kind of my go-to. I'd find that a lot easier to write than a love song. So it's kind of my go-to. And I think that there's a real need and a purpose for that in society and in music. I think that if everything becomes immediate and throwaway, and we don't hang on to stories, and we don't hang on to tales of people and nostalgia and times that how do we reconnect with those? We can recreate in certain ways elements of the past. And I know that like there's certain films these days that do that really well. But it's really, really hard you've got to keep that in our art form. I think you got to keep some of that elements of that in our art form. And I guess I just love some of the roots of folk music. That's where my folk kind of roots and what I grew up on comes out, I guess.
Yeah, and the way that Celtic folk music can be sonically so upbeat and energetic and often cheerful and light-hearted to the ear, like on the surface, but when you pay attention to the messages and the stories being told, they're very often of hardship or quite grim, or like you said, of a protest nature.
Yeah, yeah, true.
And that combination of that juxtaposition is something I've always found attractive about this music. I really like how you guys maintain a bridge between the present and Aussie history as well. And of course, I'm referring to Australian history with reference to the Celtic roots. I'm obviously speaking of white Australian history there, but like this kind of music does, in my opinion, keep that history book open and accessible where it could otherwise be forgotten about. And those, working class tales, like they still really resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty tricky. Music's a really strange. It's a really strange industry because it's not about its core. It's not about its core sensory experience. And what I mean by that is that music, in theory, is something that we experience for our ears. But actually, everything about music is not about the ears at all. It's about what we see and what we perceive. And it's like a Coca-Cola commercial. It's not really about the taste at all. It's actually really about selling something. And I see a lot of punk bands, and they all kind of look the same with, their kind of really cliche looks. And it's really kind of hipster, and everything's about immediate grab of attention. A video clip with some guys chain smoking 50 bongs, and it's kind of funny for a second. I get it, but it's all just this immediate kind of it's all this kind of immediate gratification. And then on the flip side of that, we've got this like uber wokeness, right? Where everything's so politically correct that you can't kind of say or do this. And so it's this real minefield. And a lot of punk bands are kind of both, they're kind of really hipster and all about how they look and blah, blah, blah. But they're also really, really, really hung up on like what you can and can't say and I always grew up on punk music being a bit about freedom and about community and about mutual respect and about and as much as there's some healthy sides to calling people out on things and stuff like that, it was more about educate, include, make people feel welcome, make people better, make people feel. And especially over the last few years, like it's definitely I think that the whole industry has been really good at improving people's mental health and making them feel part of a larger family and a sense of belonging and a sense of, and so that I guess when things become either super woke or super hipster, I see elements of the kind of the punk rock community, deviating from what it was originally designed to be, in my opinion.
You work in PR too, right?
I have, yeah.
You have, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the way that the industry sort of has changed over the years too, because it's obviously less about selling physical albums now, and it's more about streams and views and likes and
Yeah.
TikTok audiences and all that kind of jazz now as well. Like how have you guys found, navigating and adapting to that from when you started to now?
Yeah, look, I guess to fill in the gaps on what you're saying, I've spent a lot of time in the music industry and working in marketing and being a venue booker and having a label and done a lot of different roles in the industry. So I guess I feel reasonably qualified to talk about the changes because there has, it's changed dramatically. And I guess from a band perspective, we're okay to kind of take the hit. In other words, what I'm trying to say is rather than trying to get more and more and more popular, I think we're happy to stick to our guns and do what we do and be happy that we've maintained our our kind of artistic integrity. And so we as a band, we try not to get too dragged in any direction by, say, Snapchat. We need to do more on Snapchat, or we need to do this, or we try to get not too dragged in any direction in terms of how we should present ourselves. And even in terms of, even in terms of the way you make a video clip or dress on stage, we try to be not too affected about it and just keep it really about the music. But in saying that, I think that all bands need to be aware of the tools at their disposal and also of the potential for things to be two-sided. So whilst things can work for you, they can also really work against you. And so I think that if there was one thing that, I would say to younger bands now is to definitely be across that stuff, but don't be sucked into the vortex of it because it detracts from music. It takes away from music. And if you've got a TikTok clip that goes for 4 seconds and it's someone dancing, or that's great, but it's not really about you promoting a song. So you can do the most bizarre, attention-grabbing stunt that you want to, but it's not really getting an appreciation or an audience for your music necessarily. It's kind of more about this smash and grab for people's attention. So I think it's good to have a knowledge of how to use those tools and how to integrate them, how to get them to talk to each other, and things like Instagram and Facebook. And it's great to get across that and to work out what your audience uses. If you're a young band, they're going to be using TikTok and they're going to be using Snapchat and they're going to be using, those types of things, and probably Telegram now these days, and different ones. And if they're older, they're probably using Facebook, they're probably using Instagram, they're probably using Twitter. So you've really got to get a handle on the social media that represents your predominant demographic. But definitely I think that one of the keys is to not get down that kind of rabbit hole of being too invested in it. So making sure, one of the things I guess we have to do now is we have to make all of our artwork in different dimensions. We have to make all of our, we have to make these kind of GIF style graphics for Instagram stories. And we never really used to have to do that because you just put posters up, so it was kind of like make a poster and then put it up yourself or get other people to help you put it all around town, and that was kind of it. And then you made a physical product, which is a CD or a vinyl, and now people are tapping a Square reader to buy merch, and they're people don't even hand over cash anymore. So that's a whole nother story in terms of being a musician, because that's the one saving grace that I guess a lot of artists had, is they were getting cash on the side here and there, and they were able to kind of keep their business going that way. But if that tax is 30% less valuable now because they're getting taxed on everything, it makes it a little harder for them to operate. But that's another story again.
It's interesting to think about the pros and cons, because I had a conversation with a younger person recently who did not even understand the concept of street teams and people standing outside venues just handing out the little flyers and stuff, and the manpower that took to get people's attention. Whereas obviously now we're online, you can reach so many people by just the click of a button. But do you think that maybe this is also going to lead us down the track of seeing bands forming that aren't going to be touring, and a lot of their presence will be simply online presence? I know a lot of bands I speak to these days, younger bands, they are writing from different parts of the country, and they almost never, end up in the same room together, and they're not really touring, and it's just videos and digital releases. Do you think that we're going to be seeing more of that and less touring bands? Like, where do you think we're going with that side of things?
Yeah, look, I think it's cycles, right? So I think that, but we're definitely in a cycle of creating the virtual band. There's no doubt about it. And you see bands now that what they do is they work out before they put anything out in public. They write 10 songs, they work out which one of those is a hit. They pay a producer to come in and make it more hit worthy. Then they work out what they're going to wear. Then they work out how they're going to get a video clip and all their socials done and all these ways of, marketing and present themselves. And the first time you see them, they look like they're a band that's played together and been around for 10 years, and they're a professional outfit. And actually, it's like this really hollow snow globe of like just all kind of smoke and mirrors, because it's not really a band. And quite often you see those bands, when they do come out to play live, they're terrible. But we're definitely in an upswing of that. And I think the natural way of things with music is you get an upswing of that to a certain point, and then you'll see like the organic band return. What I would say about Australian bands, though, compared to, say, for example, American bands, most Australian bands have done a lot more gigs before they get known than, say, American bands. And so when you look at the average level of a touring Australian band, they're good. Australian bands are per capita as good, if not better, than almost any other band I've seen in the world. German bands and American bands, and I would say up there with Canadian bands and New Zealand bands. They're the best kind of three groups of countries that per capita, I think, in terms of musicianship and organic bands that get together. So I think that I think that we're certainly in an up cycle of that, and people see that as a shortcut to kind of getting fame and success. And it does work to a degree, but that will dissipate, that will dissipate soon. I think people are starting to move more towards really personalized experiences now. And yeah, I know that for us, people would rather really see the workings of playing rather than watching anything online.
Yeah, and I was going to ask that about you guys too, like being that you excel and are a force to be reckoned with as far as being a live band goes, and that's where the majority of your following has come from. Do you notice an effect on like streams and views and stuff when you're touring versus when you're maybe in an off period?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's definitely when you're busy and you're online and you're out doing shows and connecting with people, there's definitely a flux of downloads and streams and interaction, and your social media numbers go up, and definitely stuff like that. I think also there's also, aside from the data, there's also a reconnection with people on a much more organic level, where you might reconnect with when you've been around for a lot of years and you're doing this kind of touring circuit. We catch up with mates everywhere now. So we catch up with mates in Brisbane and mates in Sydney and mates in Perth and mates in Tassie, maybe that we haven't seen for a couple of years. And so you see this also kind of reconnection to, why you first became friends. And so there's this other level of activity that goes on too, that's maybe more personal. So maybe people that, that I might have forgotten to text or to call, and say, g'day, you reconnect with. So hey, we're going to be in Melbourne in a couple of weeks, let's go to the footy, or something. So your social life tends to increase, and then that helps to bring numbers to shows because they're bringing their friends, and it creates a real swell of enthusiasm and reconnection on a personal level as well.
Yeah, and so on that as well, you are about to go on tour next month, because it's been a little while. It's been a hot minute since you toured. Is there anywhere in particular that you are like just fanging to get back to, and that do you have a favorite venue or a favorite destination?
Look, as I say, we kind of have friends in each of the places. So when we go to Sydney, we hang out with all our Sydney mates. When we play in Melbourne, we've got a whole bunch of mates there. We haven't been to Tassie for a long time though. And so Tassie will be really good for us to get back there. We haven't played. We play Hobart and Launceston at the end of April. And then we've got Darwin in there as well. And we haven't been to Darwin for a few years. So both of those places will be good because there's been a little bit extra time since we've seen a lot of the people live up there. So yeah, but look, all of the places on here are good. We've got some regional shows. It'll be great to get, into those kind of little sweaty places and everyone jumping around, a bit of a party vibe. So I think over the last couple of years, one thing I've really come to recognize is I just appreciate every moment with the band that I've got and the people that we know. And so when we can get out and do what we love to do, and especially now with new music, I'm just, I just count my blessings. It's like, it's a very fortunate existence.
With having the time away from touring, has that made you appreciate just the stage a lot more? Is that something, are you more inclined to be drawn to the stage rather than writing, or is it like a 50-50 thing? Like, where's your heart really?
No, it's live. Yeah, it's I think it's definitely live. Like we took it for granted. We took it for granted. We were playing so much. We were sitting in a bus in Europe for 50 days, or a long time, over a month. Like every day we were playing. And so when you do that, you kind of just take for granted that you're going to be able to do this forever or until you're sick of it and don't want to do it anymore. And then when someone takes it away and says, no, you guys, not only can you not play music, but you can't hang out together anymore either. No wonder a lot of artists' mental health went through the floor. So we came out the other side of that, went, wow, I can't wait to do a gig, even if it's at, the local pub. Like, can't wait to do a gig again.
Yeah.
So, and now I look at this tour and it's got all these dates all around the place, and we're kind of talking at the moment about getting back to Europe and North America. And I'm excited like a kid, like it's a bit of a reawakening and repositioning. It's certainly, it's certainly, I don't take those things for granted anymore.
I can see it in your face the second you started describing playing and touring. I could see the enthusiasm you have for this, and if that's any indicator on how the upcoming tour is going to go, well, it's going to go off. Like, there's energy sparking from you right now. Have you guys been out and about playing shows now that we're on the other side of lockdowns, or is this going to be like the first major run of gigs you've had in a while?
It's the first big bunch of shows. We've done bits and pieces. So last year we did a request a set. So we got people, anyone who wanted to see us play, Melbourne and Sydney, said you can write the set list. So we got people to, if you had a ticket to a show, you could write the set list. So then we had to go and learn all these songs that we didn't know how to play from our back catalogue. And
I was going to say, how messy was that process?
Pretty messy, yeah.
How did it feel to reconnect and relearn songs and remember how to be together as a band again? I imagine it was a time and a half and must have felt pretty electric, really, to be back doing the thing.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We had to kind of stop chatting and drinking beers and get on to what we needed to do and get these songs practiced. So we kept getting sidetracked, because that's what happens if you haven't seen people for a long time. You just want to chat and but yeah, we've got a few sporadic shows under our belts, and over the course of the last 6 to 12 months, and now we're kind of back to ready to do a whole run of shows. And when this run of shows is over, I think we'll look at some overseas run of shows.
Yeah, awesome. Now, just back on the record for a minute, I want to ask, am I allowed to talk about the last song on it, or is that a secret until it's released?
Yeah. No, you can talk about it.
So you guys have covered the Pogues, Sunny Side of the Street, and I just want to say it's one of my top 5 favorite songs of all time. So I'm really excited that you guys decided to cover that one. Was it just a plucked out of nowhere, like, let's do that one, or was there a more sentimental reason behind it?
Yes and no. Like, I just love that song. So we were just kind of tossing around something fun to play one day, and I was like, oh, this is a really groovy song. This would be really good to play live. And then we ended up just banging it down, and the demo of it sounded okay. So we kind of thought, yeah, we'll keep that.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's just so you can't listen to it and not smile. That's how I feel. You are releasing the album on St. Patrick's Day. Was that a deliberate move as well?
Oh, well, it was going to be around that date. And like, I know that that's a date that a lot of people who follow us and are kind of up and about, you know, they're kind of up for a party and stuff like that. So it's a great day to release it in a way, because if you release it and people put it on their phones or their devices, or that's the day they're going to be listening to it, and that's the day it's probably a good marry up of a day to be listening to our album for the first time, you know.
Yeah, and do you guys have plans for the day? Are you going to have like an album release party of some description, maybe just yourselves, or are you going to hit the pubs, or what are you going to do? It's like St. Paddy's Day's on a Friday this year. You got to make the most of that shit.
Yeah, well, that's true. We've kind of gone off playing on St. Patrick's Day, to be fair. It's always a really strange mixture of like incredibly drunk people by the time we come on stage. And so we've kind of gone a bit off playing on St. Patrick's Day, but I'll still be going and having a beer somewhere and catching up with some mates and stuff like that. And then the next night, on the 18th, we've got a regional venue in Victoria where we're doing an album launch party. And what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to play about an hour and a half set with the new album in it, and then we're going to do another set, an hour and a half as well. So we're going to do 2 long sets. The other set will be all of our back catalogue. So we're just going to bang out all of our, 2.5, 3 hours of music over Saturday night.
Nice. Whereabouts is that going to be?
Down in Portland in Victoria, which is a bit of a home away from home for us. A couple of the boys from the band live down there, and we spend a bit of time down there over the summer. And so that works out to be a really good live rehearsal for us too. So we'll get to play live all those different songs with a whole bunch of our mates, and then we'll be pretty much ready to get out on the road and start the tour.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Justin. It's been rad talking to you. Do you have any words of wisdom to impart before I do wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'm the last person you should ask for words of wisdom.
I think I've allowed you to go down a few tangents as it is already. So I feel like I just skimmed over the fact that you're releasing an album, and we talked about all sorts of other shit, but that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So the album's out on St. Patrick's Day. You can get it on all the usual platforms, and we'll be out on the road in Queensland. We start it on the Gold Coast on the 31st of March, and we will be travelling all around the country, and then we'll kind of add more dates as they come up. So at this stage through to June.
I did notice on the little press release I got sent that there were a few dates on there that had to be confirmed. So I'm like, oh, cool. There's going to be heaps more popping up over the course of the next few months. So it sounds like you guys have got the rest of your year planned out with just gigging the shit out of the country, which sounds like a time.
It will be, yeah, it sure will be.
Alrighty, well, I encourage everyone to make sure that you check out The Warriors Beneath Us on March 17 and have a look at those tour dates and get out there.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much for talking to me, Justin. At the time of recording this interview, the release of The Warriors Beneath Us was just around the corner, but you can hear it now in all its glory on your preferred listening platform. The Go Set will be on the road across the country, kicking off on March 31st, all the way through until June. So get on their website, thegoset.com, to see when they'll be playing near you. If you've never seen them live before, then I highly encourage you to get out there and experience this band. We are never giving up. We will never fall.